maybe I'm having a midlife crisis. Maybe that's what it is. That's what they talk about, isn't it? You get these 40-year-olds that suddenly go out and impulsively buy like a convertible. Solely
That's
on me.
actually how you think. Then you're already like, you're 50 in your head already, right? We see Mohamed Hijab and the type of things he does and some of the wacky things and some of the really good things he's done. And it's a full package. Part of his package is the impulsivity. And I don't want an ummah where we don't have anyone like that's impulsive kind of thing. Okay, bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I did have a few things, like I was thinking, where did I see this? Yes, this was it. So the brother, what's his name? Shahid, from the, ex Qawamun channel. He made a video. I don't know if you saw it. I sent it to you actually. And it was about, basically like, he was like one of those sarcastic kind of ones where he was like, yeah, you better donate to these YouTubers. Otherwise, God forbid they have to get a job and they actually earn money. And that kind of hit a soft spot for me because I've always, not soft spot, but sensitive spot for me because I do have a debate in my mind, even though, or despite that we have like a PayPal link on our website. We don't like push to it much, but it is there, right? I do question this whole thing of, it made me think, it was good. It was a good exercise in my head because you've got, for example, somebody like Mufti, let's say, right, that we often talk about. Mufti is somebody who, he went and with or without anyone's money, anyone's support, he went and studied the Sharia. He went abroad and stuff at a young age, and he was there for like, I think 8 years. He was just studying, and he talked about how he used to eat milk and bread and stuff, yogurt and bread, and sometimes, that's all he was eating. Because obviously, he wasn't earning money out there or whatever, right? Then he does all that study, and then he comes back to goes back to the US, and then I think he's like an imam now or something. Like he's actually imam of a masjid. And he does his durus and he does this and that. So you would assume he's getting some sort of money for the imam position, but he's got a Patreon, right?
Yeah.
And so, oh wow, I'm getting invaded. Yeah. So, so yeah, he's kind of like, look, I'm doing this with or without people's money, with or without your Patreon support. Like I'm doing this, right? This is my thing in life, and I've already committed 8 years of effort and time into doing this, and it's like, and it's not like pushed all over the place or anything, and right. It's just kind of there. Okay, so that's like one scenario where I feel like that's a bit, I'm much more sympathetic to that. Then you've got people like you and I, or like any other kind of whether they have a podcast or a YouTube channel, and they're not teaching religion. They're not teaching Sharia. They're not giving people reminders per se. They're just talking about their opinions, really, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we're coming from an Islamic perspective, as limited as we are in terms of our perspective, right? We're trying to come from an Islam perspective because that's how we try and think and stuff. But in the end, I mean, this is what went through my head. Is like, okay, we chose to do a podcast. We need money to do some of the things for the podcast, right? And sometimes growing the podcast, you need to spend money on that as well. Why should people give us money? Sometimes it's hard for me to justify that, the answer to that question being yes, because it's like, okay, you want to share your opinion, you pay for it. I mean, I'm sure there's a counter perspective. Do you have that counter perspective, or you're thinking what I just said, or what?
For me, it's not too complicated. I think maybe because, okay, for example, I think drawing an example between Mufti and somebody else, I think they're maybe false examples, only because Mufti provides particular services that he also pays for, he also charges for. Not just the merchandise in terms of like the books he's written, some of the clothing merchandise. That's some sort of level of entrepreneurship there.
Okay, but that's not Patreon. I'm just talking about Patreon. Yeah.
I haven't really necessarily explored the Patreon. It'd be interesting to see what the perks are, because Patreon
Yeah. I don't think
isn't
there are
always
any because
no perks.
I've been a Patreon. I don't
Yeah.
remember seeing
But the
anything.
dawah is quite clear. You know, the ilm there is quite clear there, and the ability to then facilitate for that to spread more is quite clear. You know, I don't think there's any two ways about it. Um, I think for anyone else, it depends on how it's framed, doesn't it? I mean, I think it's Shahid, isn't it? That's his name.
Yeah.
Shahid. I think his. I always get mixed
Or
up. This
Shahid or
between
Shahid. I don't know.
Shahid. I always get mixed up with Shadid, and I can't remember which one it was. Anyway, Mr. Middle Nation. He listens to the podcast sometimes. I think, and this is just an assumption, and I'm not going to name names, but I think it was in response to a particular channel that was getting a lot of a lot. They were pushing a lot through themselves and through other channels to donate to this channel.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you know, you need to support the dawah, etc., etc.
Yeah.
This and that. This
And they
and that.
use that specific word, support the dawah.
Yeah, and I think once you've positioned yourself in that, then it can become controversial. I would never say in a million years that support Mind Heist to support the dawah. You know, I'd never put myself in that pedestal.
Why
However,
not?
I just don't feel I wouldn't comfortably put myself in the dawah, because I'd have to be questioned about why that money is, like why I went to support that money when I went to request that money to support it. You know, I mean, we're both working. You know, we both have full-time jobs, so this is something that we very much do on the side. There is some cost to it, you know. In fact, more now than there used to be. The larger we grow, and the more things that we want to do, you know, there is cost to it. However, if you enjoy the show and you want to support the show, you want to see the show continue growing, then by all means support it if you wish to.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because it's, to me, akin to every other endeavor in the world.
Yeah,
You know,
creative endeavor or
creative
anything.
endeavor in
Yeah.
the world, such as, you know, if you, I know I see it in the other creative space, in the art space, in the graphic design space.
Yeah.
I see it in every single other podcast that's out there. Forget the Islamic ones for a second.
Yeah,
Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? Just step outside of your Muslim bubble, so to speak, and just see what the rest of the world does. Now, how many streamers do you see with donations? How many streamers do you see with this? How many streamers do you see with that?
Even super chat and this and that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, money is a way of showing your support to want to continue to see something going, right?
Yes, yes.
And that's all I see it.
Yeah.
But to say support us to support the dawah, then puts you into this framework of this is where I want my money to go for the sake of the dawah. But then you're then going to be held accountable for that statement. Like, is it dawah? Can you consider
exactly.
yourself dawah? Do
Are you
sincerely think it's dawah?
Are you calling people to Islam specifically to practice their religion, or are you calling to your opinion? And what's the, you know, it's blurry what that is, etc. Exactly.
For me, you know, I simplify it down. Like, if I was to put Mind Heist in that spotlight, I would say, hey, if you enjoy Mind Heist, feel free to support the show if you want to see it continue going.
Yeah.
Because there have been months, bro, where, you know, I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's just the state of the world and the state of the way things are. There's been months where there have been those monthly bills which do stack up, and I've struggled to pay them off.
Yeah.
But that's because of everything else that we've got going on in our lives.
Yeah.
And maybe through that facilitation, we'll be able to record more frequently, be able to do more stuff. At the end of the day, we wouldn't be doing this show if we had 0 listeners every week, right?
Yeah,
but that's not the reality. The reality is we have a lot, and we're growing quite a lot. So it is what it is. If people enjoy it and people want to see it continue, that's free. But at the same time, it's a balance, isn't it? You don't want to just be harping on about, oh, support us. We started this on our own backs, and we'll continue being there on our own backs.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And we're not going to stop people from wanting to support.
Of course,
and we're not also going to blackmail people by saying we aren't continuing unless you pay us.
Yeah. Exactly. I want to make it clear, like, you know, people obviously have supported us very, very generously. And I agree with you 100% that anything out there, if you know that it has costs and you want to contribute to that, either as a form of helping financially or even just moral encouragement, right? Or morale booster or whatever to those people, that's good. And that's why, you know, I accepted that help and I really appreciate that help. And I think it goes just like with anything you've said, you know, like a graffiti artist, you like their work and you know the paint costs them money. Okay, give them money. You want to see them do more stuff. It's just that when I started thinking about, because to be honest with you, I did and I do kind of like in an unofficial way consider this dawah in terms in terms of what I understand is that some people listen to the show, and they do have some level of maybe a deeper, like a paradigm shift about some topic of life, or how Islam corresponds to certain parts of their life or whatever. And I hope I always kind of hope to do that through the podcast. It's just that if I was to like be that official with it, like it's just in my head and heart and in my intention is dawah. But then to go out there and say support the dawah, now I feel like now that's official. Now it's like, okay, if Sheikh so and so saw me do that, would he be like, yeah, that's correct? Or would he be like, what dawah? What are you talking about? There's definitions of dawah and this and that, you know? So just internally, I'm like, yeah, inshallah, this is dawah. That's my intention. But in terms of going out and saying, yeah, if you're supporting the show, you're supporting dawah, it becomes a bit too official. And
I'd like to think of it as like a glass half empty sort of thing, because it'd be nice on Yawm al-Qiyamah to see things that I didn't necessarily think had benefit then having benefit, as opposed to definitively going out and making a statement that this is entirely for 100% dawah purposes, and then seeing it Yawm al-Qiyamah very deficient in that regard.
Yeah,
you know?
although you have to have the intention to have the reward.
I want to have, so the intention, and this is another thing that maybe people don't think about too much, but intentions can be very flexible in the sense that my intention, for example, is I really enjoy doing this show every week. I really like talking to Amin all the time, every week. Actually, I benefit a lot from it. And, Ya Allah, if people find benefit through this, then please reward me for it. You know? But it's not like I'm going straight into it with my intention. My intention for this show, Ya Allah, is to benefit people every single week. Like, I want to be honest with myself, and I think that's where the sincerity comes from. Be honest, and then you can then reap the rewards from all angles, because your intention covers all bases in that regard, and Allah knows best, but that's just the way I frame it.
What about this concept of we're providing halal entertainment?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it is in a way.
Do you think we're doing that, and that's something
I'd say alternative. Yeah, it's if your intentions there, I'd say alternative entertainment. I don't like throwing halal around, because once again, by making that statement, this is halal entertainment, it's almost like you're committing that every single thing that's ever said in every single episode is halal. The moment it isn't, is it still halal? I don't know. It gets a bit diabolical in my head. So I'd say alternative. Yeah, alternative to a lot of clear, obvious filth that is out there. Absolutely. I was just having this thought before we logged in. I was looking up on Twitter just keywords. I put in Islam, gym, and music, right? Because I'm on this sort of quest to understand how people would motivate themselves consistently in the gym. And obviously, way before I was practicing, music was very much would fill that void. Okay, of just getting people out of bed, getting people into the gym, getting people exercising or motivated about life and stuff. And I think maybe since I stopped practicing, I think the bouts of motivation were a lot shorter since I stopped listening to music, because there wasn't that what we're conditioned to is that soundtrack to your life to motivate you and make you feel like you're in a movie. You know what I mean? Get that Rocky montage going while you're working out. But I was interested in the psychology behind it, and I was interested in, what if there was any discussion regarding that alternatives for Muslims that are trying to practice their deen, right? Now I know for some Muslims they attend gyms and music's playing and they can't help that. I think for the gym that I go to at work, it's very small. Nobody ever turns up, so it's completely silent. So it's trying to find that psychological area where you cannot rely on something external that isn't necessarily permissible for you, right? And I think that's where I was exploring. I was just exploring that idea, exploring that notion, exploring these sort of concepts when it comes to alternative motivators, alternative entertainment, etc., etc.
Yeah. What did you find?
I haven't yet, because I literally just started. So it's interesting to think about it. I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts about it, but there is that reliance, isn't there? particular hobbies or whatever it is, there's this deep reliance on something, a pillar of it that's fundamentally controversial or impermissible in our religion.
Yeah. I
And
didn't.
then where do you go from there?
I don't remember. I don't remember having that such a deep connection between like working out and music, and the music be specifically being there as a motivator. You know,
Really, yeah.
I don't remember really associating those things so closely, but I do get it definitely because music creates emotion, and emotion can create action.
Mm.
So it makes sense. Um, but wow, surely you should be able to work out without it. I mean, you can go down different routes. You can go down the, like, some people will literally just listen to what you would call like motivational
So,
speeches.
so that's one. So I've noticed that on a lot of Muslim brothers' Instagram pages, for example, uh, they'll put up a video of them in the gym and stuff. But you can hear, I don't know if they've attached it on, or you can hear it in the background that that's the sort of stuff they're listening to.
Hmm.
Um, And you know what? Years ago, I tried that, and it was like it
That's
lasted
not
for
you.
like 5 minutes. It
That's
just
not
cringed
you.
me out. Yeah, it cringed me out so much. Like I was like,
Yeah.
what is this nonsense?
Yeah.
Um,
And this isn't like some people they box motivational speech with like an actual like educational podcast or something. It's not the same thing, right? Like when I say motivational speech, I mean a speech literally its only purpose is motivation and
yeah.
hype
Oh,
people up.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Quotes from like speeches and
yeah,
movies and all sorts of
cliche
stuff.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's only so many of them, so you end up listening to the same one again and again and
Mm.
again, and
You got
yeah,
that
it's
guy.
just
What's his
cringe.
name? Hip hop preacher. That's what they used to call him.
Oh
Eric.
yeah. Oh, I don't know his name, but I
Uh,
know the one you're referring to.
is it Eric Thomas? Is that it?
I don't know his name, but
Anyway, yeah.
there's like Rocky in there as well. I know that Sylvester Stallone's got a bit of a line in there in those videos.
Oh,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
some people
Eric
live
Thomas. Yeah, that's it.
that to me was like the birth of that eventually led to like the birth of the red pill agenda, like those videos, because I think
Really? Yeah.
from there things that's the first kind of self help. I don't know what is
Oh,
masculinity,
really?
get off
Okay.
your butt sort of stuff that I saw,
Okay.
and then I could see an evolution from that into hey, there's a because you see those videos, bro, they've got millions of views, and
Mm.
it's like hey, there's a market for this sort of stuff,
Yeah.
especially on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, but no, like I think basically what it is I admire the people that I do see, especially non-Muslims, bro, that are intensely working out with nothing in their ears. And it's rare to see. I don't often see people without headphones. But bro, I'll be driving along I live on the cliffs and driving along those cliffs and just seeing people in the middle of the night just running with literally nothing in their ears.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I hate running with a passion. But these
Mm.
guys are like, they've got something in them that is pushing them to do that. Now, here's another discussion. Here's another side to this story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I, I feel like I'm framing this conversation as if look at the things that Islam is inhibiting us from, but that's not the way I'm trying to frame it. But because of this notion that we all die and there's an akhirah, right? Do you feel like it detracts, not in a negative way, but in the way? Yes, it detracts from the dunya, the importance that we have for the dunya,
Yeah.
but then balancing that balancing your importance of the dunya with the akhirah can sometimes be quite important, quite difficult. Like my father used to say that since I started practicing, I got kind of lazy about the dunya because I didn't care about it that much.
Yeah.
All right, and I remember that being like a big thing. Like he would obviously mention, "Oh, don't forget, your portion in this world, etc., etc., etc." Now that's easy to say about careers and money and whatever, and you can live like life like a zarehead and stuff. But then it bleeds over to your health a little bit, and then it bleeds over to you see some people that take their health in this world so seriously, and they like everything has to be counted and everything has to be measured, and you have to train so rigorously, etc., and all this discipline,
Yeah.
um, which someone who thinks, well, I'm going to die one day, I'm going to go to Jannah or Jahannam, maybe that's what I need to focus on more. They might completely disregard that, and actually, although there is evidence quite clearly in our tradition to look after your body, that your body has rights in you and stuff. I think the importance of those narrations and the importance of those traditions fall by the wayside a little bit in comparison to everything else that we also have to focus on, if not focus on more, which is like our deeds, for example.
Mm.
Do you feel like Do you feel like maybe, it's an unfortunate excuse to be lazy sometimes? Do you think that's what the comparing the average Muslim with, I don't know, the average non-Muslim in that regard? When it comes to fitness, or it comes to long-term goals, or it comes to whatever, that's all isolated in the dunya. Considering you're the master of masculinity now, and you've written a book about it, so what do you think?
It's complicated, and there's a lot of things, right? So
Yeah.
So one part of it is, okay, the kuffar have a certain amount of energy and effort, and we have a certain amount of energy and effort. And you could say, like, assuming they're like an atheist kind of modern kafir, yeah, they're going to put 100% of their effort towards the dunya.
Right.
Right? Okay. Us, like, if we did the same thing, like we used the same amount of effort, then it would be split between our akhirah pursuits and our dunya pursuits. And, that might be good. But you could say, as a Muslim, whatever motivation and effort the kafir is putting in, we should put more.
Yeah.
We got more motivation for both. Right? When I say motivation, I mean reasons for trying and striving. We have more reasons to do it in the dunya and the akhirah. Right? Because a lot of our dunya effort will actually have akhirah outcomes. Not all, but not some or a lot, but maybe all even, right? With the right intention. So really that's the position I guess we should be in, is that we have the most motivation, we're the most driven because of what we know from Allah, because of our akhirah focus and our dunya focus that is a stepping stone to the akhirah, right? So let's say that the kafir has the 50 units of drive, we should have 100.
Yeah.
Okay. The reality is, obviously you get some people, they have the same amount of drive as the kafir, but they're putting 30% of it towards the akhirah, and so they might seem like they're slacking dunya wise. But that's maybe because they're putting the 30 towards the akhirah and stuff, right? But then I think, and this is where I don't think it's, and it's partially maybe to do with your iman and stuff like that, but it's also the cultures that we come from and the places we come from, and mostly the cultures that we come from. They're different types of cultures, to be honest, Yani. If you look at, just to make it religion neutral, if you look at a Spanish person and a German person, very different kind of approaches to putting in effort and striving and being driven, not to be too stereotypical, but like the German is almost doing because he should do. And the Spanish is like, I'll do it when I feel like the passion to do it, isn't it? I mean, like, we're both from the Mediterranean countries. And this Mediterranean thing, like we might think it's like an Arab thing or it's a North African thing, but it applies to Italy, it applies to Spain, it applies to Greece and Turkey and all of that, really. That kind of just chill thing, I was sitting with a Libyan guy just now, and he's saying like, like Libya, like no one wants to work. Everyone wants to have an office job, an easy job. All the hard like labor jobs, Libyans don't do them. It's the immigrants that do them, Even in Libya, where there's only like 6 million people and stuff like that, Libya's not in a great state right now, but the Libyan doesn't want to work still, right? So, everyone, like, they label things in different ways to blame different things, but I just feel like there is a concept of different cultures have different standards for how much like you should work in general.
Yeah.
But the ideal, of course, is that, like I said at the beginning, we have that higher level of drive for dunya and akhirah, right? And our motivation to thrive in the dunya is akhirah based. But can you think of something that's like, it's dunya based, but like you would only benefit in the dunya from it? I guess it could be something like cooking, like becoming amazing at cooking. Like, it's hard to really connect that to the akhirah, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, you do have. Yeah, it's hard to. I think it's not always hard to. I think there's a lot of things that, if you explore them, you'll always find some sort of benefit in the akhirah.
Yeah,
with the
but
right
it has to be
intention.
very direct. No, I understand from a, that kind of motherly love and cooking great food for the kids and, nurturing kind of motherly thing. I get that 100%. And
Yeah, yeah,
I believe I can see that just for me, because I'm someone who cooks, not so much recently, but, I cook, Yanni, sometimes. And sometimes I just like to cook. I can't find much connection to the akhirah in that, to be honest.
it depends. Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like one thing my wife would always say, which was new to me in the sense when, in terms of intentions and stuff, was like she was very passionate about hosting and very passionate about inviting people over
Yeah.
and very passionate about. And then she would always say, "Oh, you need to karram a beef, you need to honor the guest and stuff like that,"
Yeah.
which is directly pulling from the Islamic tradition.
That's
But
true.
for me, that was something that never existed in my sort of. Although I knew it existed in terms of our tradition, it wasn't something I necessarily pursued in terms of earning a good deed via that,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
all of my thoughts of cooking and hosting people never really necessarily had that cemented intention in it.
Ah.
However, you can tell that she got good at that, maybe because that was her drive and that was part of her
Mm.
sort of,
Yeah.
her fundamentals in trying to be a
Yeah.
decent Muslim person,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So it's interesting in that angle.
Mm.
But yeah, it got me thinking. I think earlier today, me and the kids were watching. Oh God, Siri's getting involved. Earlier, me and the kids were watching wildlife documentaries and
Yeah.
watching like some zoologists and some other sort of YouTubers that just completely, do wildlife and stuff. And one thing that one of the YouTubers said, he was just like, "Oh, it's always been my dream to track a wolverine down or something like that. Like it was his lifelong dream, and now he's doing it." And then I was just thinking, like, wow, lifelong dreams are weird in the sense from a kuffar perspective, and this is kind of where maybe the conversation maybe started. I started thinking about it. Now, a lot of it is like trying to separate myself or compare myself to the rest of the ummah. And sometimes I just assume that the way I think is maybe how the rest of the ummah think. But like when it comes to lifelong dreams like that, I probably don't have any and couldn't really necessarily be bothered with something
Mm. Yeah.
so definitively cemented in the dunya, right? Like I want to see a Wolverine. It's my lifelong
Yeah.
dream, right? Or,
Wait, what's a wolverine? Isn't that a fantastical creature?
no, it's a real creature, bro.
What is it? Is it
It's a
like
real
a
animal.
alpha
It's like
wolf or something?
it's like a it's almost like a I don't know, it's like the size of a badger, and it's like a I don't know, it's got claws and
Is it a wolf? Like a type of wolf or
no,
something?
it's like a little
What do I search
mammal,
to not
a
get
little
the
vicious
X-Men thing?
first Wolverine animal.
Okay, animal.
Yeah, it's like a little mini bear wolf, not
Oh
big wolf, but
wow, that's quite
yeah,
sick. Okay. I mean, it
yeah.
wouldn't be my lifelong dream, but I can see the appeal.
I mean, you would just see it in the forest, and you just
Yo,
think,
that thing would destroy me.
yeah, you just think it's
It's
any
like
other
a,
mammal.
it's like a badger mixed with a wolf kind of thing, right?
I see a lot of bear in there.
Yes.
It's like a small bear and a badger.
Yeah. Wow.
Anywho, um, but then it got me thinking of like also of other people and their lifelong dreams,
Yeah.
dunyawi dreams.
Hmm.
And then I was looking at the zoologists, and I was like, "Oh, I told my wife they look like the happiest people on earth." Whenever you see someone working in a zoo, right, you
Yeah.
just think, "Man, they look like the happiest people on earth,"
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I was just thinking, like, I wonder what they. I honestly said to my wife, I was like, "I wonder what their house looks like. Like, they probably live in a really dinky, cheap little flat on their own, or they're house sharing, and they go to work." And they just look after all these endangered species and stuff, or
Mm-hmm.
like you see those marine biologists and stuff that are like going out and conservationists looking after turtles and stuff.
Mm.
And I think some people definitely and absolutely have like a dream in the dunya. And I wonder, because I've never had that,
Yeah.
my assumption has always been, I never had that before I was practicing. And then I think when I started practicing, I found a very convenient excuse and justification for why I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
That's it. I've nailed it. See,
Mm.
I've nailed my thought process there.
Mm.
Absolutely. So I started getting very lazy at school and stuff, and not necessarily doing as much revision as I could. And then at 18, I started practicing. I've discovered Islam, and I was fascinated by it, which didn't actually necessarily increase my grades or increase my studying. If anything, my father saw it as a distraction for me because I wasn't paying attention again. So then that's where the conversation grew up. But then I had like this justification. Oh, it's just the dunya. It's just, do you know what I mean? Why are you so stressed about the dunya stuff? Which isn't a very mature understanding of the way that we should position ourselves.
Mm.
But I think I've carried that on for a long time, which is why I'm having this thought process that maybe we do need to think, and no, certainly me, need to think very long and hard about what you said, about the intentions behind it all, and about how you can really position yourself in a way to benefit the ummah, to gain a whole lot of good deeds just through really sort of solidifying your intention. The example we spoke about was like fitness and health and stuff, right? It's very, very easy to just say, do you know what? Screw this diet, right? We're going to die in the end anyway. I'll just be sensible and I'll go to, I'll try and aim for Jannah. That's my priority. Let me just do that, right? Because doing good deeds, you'd like to think, are a lot easier than calorie counting and going out for a run and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I think so. I definitely think so. I think it's so much easier to give charity or do a simple good deed than it is to, I don't know, run a mile and absolutely like destroy your lungs, out of breath and stuff. But then to add on top of it, my body has a right for me. Sincerely, by the way, my body has a right for me, and I need to prioritize my health and fitness, excluding all the other stuff that brothers go to the gym for. The single brothers who are trying to get married, which as a lot, because why is it that as soon as everyone gets married, it just becomes so super difficult to get back into the gym again? Come on, everybody knows it. You just got to admit it. But it's real. It's real. It's a real sort of thing to think about.
Don't you think? I think this. The way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Yeah.
So if you in your mind can be satisfied with being unhealthy, then what will that mean for your hifd or for your salah or your nawafil or whatever it is? Yani the things that no, my priority is the akhirah and all that. Yeah. I think it's like and perhaps proof of that is that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't negligent of any major area of life, was he? You could point to certain scholars. You could say they're negligent to their health, actually, right? Imam an-Nawawi, etc. But they're one person out of millions, obviously, of Muslims that have come and gone.
It's interesting because I don't want to talk about days and scholars, but there are certain days and scholars that obviously from straight away looking at them, you think, they're very overweight. And I wonder what's going on there in terms of the discussion. I wonder what's going on in terms of the mindset. Now, it's easy to get on a mic, especially for days, not necessarily someone you'd consider a scholar, but it's easy for days to get on a mic just like we are and try and do good just like we do. But have all the maybe the issues such as, being overweight or whatever that need to be, there's a combat. It's a jihad, so to speak, within themselves, right? It's very easy to.
But this is a good example. Like, why are many du'at and scholars, etc., teachers, why are they overweight?
Well, it's
probably because the average Muslim is like that.
It's coming from what I was saying, which is what I'm trying to say, in the sense that we can find easy justifications for our negligence in certain fields, certain areas.
No, but I'm not saying they're overweight because they're studying so much. I'm saying they're overweight because the average Muslim, wherever they come from, right? Let's say in the UK, many Muslim men in their, let's say, 30s, a good amount of them will be overweight. Now, when you add to that the fact that someone who's really actually like a scholar and they're really into the books and the learning and all that, someone like that probably not going to have such an active lifestyle, etc. Takes a lot of effort and all that. So if you add that on top of it, that would increase the likelihood. And then boom. So you got an average guy, then you add a lot of knowledge and stuff to that and study, of course. And then you end up with that. But I think it's part of the culture. The culture, for example, in the UK, I don't know what % of the UK is overweight and obese and this and that. So it's part of the culture you live in. Just how, and different cultures will have different emphasis on different things, just how different sects or groups or whatever have different focuses on different things. Yeah. Like my friend was telling me about, I think it's like 19th century, kind of like Nigeria, West Africa region. There was a kind of a caliphate that was, like Islam was revived in that area and the caliphate was formed. And one of the leading scholar of that kind of revival, he had to write a kind of a booklet or something explaining that you must send your women out to learn their basic knowledge of Islam,
Right.
because the culture at that time was that they would show off that my women never leave the house kind of thing. So he needed to counter that. And they created a new culture where it's like, yeah, of course, like everyone has this basic knowledge, even women, etc.
Hmm.
So different places will have different, like again, if we go back to being overweight, okay, in the Khalij, so in the Gulf in general, a lot of people are overweight. Okay, where they have the culture of eating loads of rice and driving everyone in the car because of the weather and all of that. Okay, so yani, of course, some of the scholars will not be like that, but many will because part of the
Yeah.
culture. And you can't. I don't think I would expect scholars to be exceptional in every part of their life to the point where they're all slim.
I think there's a. I don't want to use this or discuss this as an excuse, but I think there is something to be said for obviously the quality of food, the types of food that's available, the comfort and the
Education on
accessibility.
food as well.
Yeah, education, but the accessibility of food, maybe I don't want to go into deep conspiracy, but the hormonal impact of foods, the chemical imbalances, the effects of certain things that then have an effect on the body, and the cravings that builds up. Like, going from keto to not keto to keto to not keto, for example, just on the carb discussion, I definitely see myself getting way hungrier after I've had, like, when I'm just normally eating like on carbs. Um, as opposed to on keto, where for some reason, like, it's so much easier for me to have like one meal a day, and I just won't feel hungry. But any element of sugar, spiking that insulin or whatever it is,
Yeah.
suddenly you just get craving again. In a couple of hours, you just want to eat again. So yeah, I think there is something to be said for you know uh, life being very different. Especially in the food eating system, so to speak, being very different. But um, look, ultimately, we speak about this all the time. It's like trying to master oneself, and I think that's where I'm trying to come at this from. It's like we should be able and we should aim to, and what would be ideal is to master yourself in every one of these aspects: your deen and your dunya, your health and your well-being, your mental state, your good deeds, your time with your family. Like, you, the ideal is to master it all. Or that should be what we're trying to aim for. Maybe that we all have our weaknesses, and actually it's our weaknesses that we need to focus on. Um, you know, so it's hard to say. I think we do allocate importance to certain things. I think going back to what you said earlier about um, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. I agree with that mostly, but I also feel like there are certain things that people have different I don't know, hierarchies for, importances for,
Of course.
not just sins, but good deeds or obligations as
Yeah.
well.
But that's what
Like,
I'm saying. That's what a culture is.
do you think? But not, but it's individualistic as well. It's not just culture
Yeah.
overall. There's
Both.
some things that, like, I'll give you an example. I'm not trying to brag here. Wallahi al-azim. It's not a bragging thing anyway. It's just like, for example, salat to me, prayer, it's just, since I started practicing, it's just been absolutely fundamental. No matter how bad things get, it's just never been something like I've even been tempted to stop. Alhamdulillah, may Allah always keep me like that.
Amen.
Okay. Um, for others, though, I would consider them as practicing as I am. Okay. But I've seen that when the going gets tough, it's easy to delay, to skip a prayer, and it got me thinking of, like, there is definitely something. There's definitely a unique way that we see things that are beyond just the label that Allah gives them of, this is this is a major sin.
Yeah.
Not that Allah says this is a minor, but definitely labels of the major sins, right? For example, and there are some common themes across the board. For example, many, if not all, Muslims consider pork and alcohol. Well, let's say pork, actually. Let's go just for pork. Yeah, many Muslims all across the practicing spectrum will consider pork to be the absolute no-go, like, no way.
Red line.
Red line. Maybe because it's easy to hate a disgusting looking animal. Maybe that's why. But other stuff, we kind of like, ooh, where does that come from?
Yeah.
So
I
I
think
think it's just
on the individual level, people prioritize things a lot of the time. I think it's based on, maybe this is my experience, based on your knowledge of Islam, of different parts of Islam, right?
right.
So, for example, you'll see some brothers where what they've learnt is, for example, a lot about the importance of unity and tolerance and love between brothers and all that. Yeah. And then you'll find others who maybe they haven't learnt so much about that side of things. And so they'd be much more happy to be like confrontational and name people names and all of that.
Yeah,
So sometimes as lay people, we're not all coming from the same knowledge. Like we've learnt, and depending on what kind of group or what scholars you sit with, you're going to learn different sides of the
yeah,
religion, right? I find that in myself for sure. To the level where, and this is how you know you're like jahil, right? Like if you read one book and it can completely change your thinking, you know you're jahil, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember when I was like, first getting into more like learning actual like stuff about Islam, like actually learning it. I was in that like strict phase, right? For example, with the trousers above your ankles. It just seemed like very black and white to me, and how could there be another opinion and all of that? And I found myself arguing with someone about it. It's like I don't like now. I would not even like it would be a back and a forth and end of conversation these days. But at that time, because I didn't really know, I guess it was like argument, argument, argument.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think my dad sensed this from me, or I probably argued with my dad to be honest about some of these issues. And
Yeah.
then he gave me this one book, and that one book just like showed me like the reality of difference of opinion and stuff in Islam. And then, so what I'm saying is, because I was exposed to that book, I kind of just, that was it. Like from, that must have been age 19, 20, like that age onwards, I was way different when it came to different opinions just from that one piece of information. So, you know, you're on an individual level, a lot of it I think is to do with what you learn. And then imagine
Yeah,
these
yeah.
people that, you know, like Daniel Hakikaju calls the compassionate imams. Yeah? If you've just been learning from them, then you're going to be a certain way as well. So that's on the individual level. And then on the like country level or whatever, you've got a culture of certain things being more important than others, you know, whether it's hospitality, whether it's different forms of ibadah, etc. And even to the level where, again, I go back to the Gulf. In the Gulf, like the Gulf, they're like simple people, right? And like they didn't live. Yeah, and when I say simple people, as far as my understanding, they didn't have like universities until like 40 years ago, something like that. Yeah, they didn't. Not that university is the only way to be educated, but they didn't seem to have a deep culture of education amongst their people, other than
Right.
certain very specific people, until very recently. So they don't have a culture of knowledge and education. That will affect you, and maybe that's the reason why they're easy to not know about nutrition and therefore get overweight and this and that. Perhaps, Yanni, you could say perhaps that. Versus other countries where 50 years ago they started teaching people in schools about nutrition, for example. So these on a cultural level now, or a societal level, that will influence as well, like what you take seriously, what's a priority, what's not a priority. You know, how your history of your people, how much they've been educated or uneducated, if they're nomadic people, if they're trading people, all of this will play a role.
Mm.
But it doesn't, Yani, these are all, you could say, reasons or excuses, however you want to say it.
This is it, and
But
that's what. Yeah.
but the top of the top will still, Yani, prioritize the right things or prioritize everything that's good. You know, you still find
Yeah.
scholars that no matter what culture they come from or etc., they're slim, they don't eat much, they're always fasting, they're always dhikr, they're always this and that. And that's
Yeah.
obviously what we strive for.
And I think ultimately, that final bit that you've just said does make me think. Like sometimes I find myself going in a loop of like how to sort out things, how to fix myself, how to get myself to the best I could possibly be. And usually the answer is right under my nose, because what you've just said really is just a description on the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or at least a little bit of his description, in the sense that, yeah, there is a description of how he ate. There is a description of how he carried himself. We have a whole lifestyle, mapped out for us that we just need to emulate. And I think maybe sometimes we want to have our cake and eat it too, in the sense that maybe we find it easy to pick the bits of lifestyle that Prophet ﷺ had. Okay, pick the bits that are we can abide by. Oh yeah, growing a beard, I can do that easy. Let me take that,
Yeah.
right? You know, but then other things such as what was it? I was talking to my wife about this, and I've got that little Hadith of the Day app. You know, the Hadith of the Day that popped up yesterday. Let me see if I can open it because it's on brand. Hadith of the Day. Oh God, I don't know where it is. Islam. Oh, I don't know where my thing is. Either way, the Hadith of the Day was in relation to the Hadith of Prophet ﷺ, speaking about. I'm paraphrasing, but speaking about the worst vessel son of Adam can fulfill is his stomach, and then the advice was to fill, a third of food, a third for water, and a third for air to breathe. And I was just thinking, like, ultimately, maybe I overcomplicate all these situations when actually it'd just be easy to just follow the Prophet ﷺ, not just in the fundamentals of the obligations, but in all the sunnah and all the lifestyle stuff, because it's all a holistic way of life. And I think maybe the clashes come when you kind of take apart and leave apart. And I'm not just talking about the obligations. Obligations you should take all, but like even the sunnah, like if you take some sunnahs and leave others off because you think, oh, I can do other than that, I don't need to necessarily do that, I think you kind of miss out on the clockwork of it all. I think
synchronicity.
Exactly.
Synergy,
it's like clockwork. I was having this discussion with my wife about Sharia law in general, and I think she had a question about some sort of aspect that kind of made its way onto the news, and I can't remember what country was trying to implement it or whatever. It could have been about abortion. It could have been about all sorts, because there's a big abortion thing going on in America, isn't there? There's a big discussion on that. I'm staying way out of that. I don't know enough, and whatever happens in America doesn't necessarily affect me directly. May Allah guide people to what's best. But Islam is holistic. Islam is a complete way of life. It's not certain aspects without others. It's not take this bit and forget about that bit because it's not important. It's all important. I want to say equally. We should implement it all as much as possible, if not all of it. So when you've got certain things that we hold as clear fact in Sharia and we should take, and others we kind of put to the wayside based on our own artificial sort of preference or hierarchy for it all, then we have the cheek to kind of point at the Sharia and say, oh, it's not working. See, it doesn't work in the modern days. Well, no, it's because you haven't put the whole puzzle together. It has to be that synchronicity of it all. I'll give you an example. Here it is. Here's the example. The discussion I think we had was surrounding on how men will take advantage of certain aspects of Sharia for their own personal gain, which will be like maybe the obedience of the wife, it will be like the inheritance, it will be like all of this stuff, right? And then I told my wife, well, there's a big problem here that you're not realizing. There are no Sharia courts. So the judge, jury, and executioner is the man himself. How can a man rule over himself? How can a man enact the Sharia in his household when he's only got to answer to himself? When actually, if the Sharia was applied fundamentally, he'd also have someone to ask him about the Sharia, so to speak. He'd have the courts, he'd have the accountability. So one of the biggest gaping holes in our Islam in this modern day and age is the fact that the man, the leader of the household, he is a slave to his own weakness because he's got nobody to be held accountable against. The Sharia doesn't say that the man is the judge. The Sharia doesn't say that the man, the man is the ultimate ruler of his household. No, he has others too. So can you see what I'm trying to say here? When you have these gaping holes, then you become a slave to your weakness.
Yeah.
And then things can go south. But what we end up doing, a lot of us, is we say, oh, look, Sharia is the problem. It's not that. It's that we haven't implemented it all, or we're not in a society where all can be implemented.
I mean, it depends how high you're aiming as well. Because, like we can't just discount the fact that certain things are wajib for a reason that absolutely can't be let off. And there's a rahmah in the fact that we don't have to do everything the Prophet ﷺ did. Like we have to, yani. But if you want the best results, I guess, it's like, you should be trying all these things. And it's like when we're talking about eating, overeating, diet, and sleep, maybe, and these kind of things. Yeah, maybe we quickly dismiss, for example, the idea of having like a nap. It's like, oh, I work in an office. How am I going to take a nap? I mean, many people take naps, Or I can't fast while I'm working. Well, did you try like what Shamaki said about the electrolyte drinks?
Yeah.
That could be a game changer. So it's like if you're aiming like really high, even just for your well-being, like in the dunya, and obviously hoping for some reward as well. If you're aiming high, then you just try and find things. Like if you have an illness that's really bothering you, you're going to go to one doctor and it doesn't work out, and then another one, and then like people do with antidepressants, they'll cycle through like 5 different ones till they find one. Okay, this one seems to work. So do
Yeah.
the same with your lifestyle, isn't it? Oh, I tried to fast Monday, Thursday, and I couldn't keep it up. Oh, let me try just Monday. Let me try with the electrolyte drink. Let me try sleeping in this way, and it helped me out. Yeah, and so a lot of it comes down, I think, to what's your drive to actually aim that high and get those kind of top-notch results.
Do you think? Do you think you'd be trying to figure all of that out though for like the rest of your life? Maybe like I'm talking this way because like I'm 29 this summer in a couple of months, and I'm just like I'm still trying to figure stuff out. I think that's what I'm getting annoyed about. Like I still feel like I still haven't understood or
That's
or
early,
unlocked
bro.
myself. Huh?
30's still young, bro.
But to me, it's like I've had 30 years to figure this out. Like, come on,
You've probably
I know.
had like 5 years to work it out in reality, though.
Maybe, maybe, but I do wonder. Like, I see older generations so solidified in their routines, and I just wonder, are they? Is that it? Like, is that them done? Like, do they waste much brain space in trying to improve, or are they kind of settled in
Depends on
that
the
kind of?
person.
Mm,
And also, you can't always see it from the outside. You
yeah,
might
true.
see someone just seem kind of normal, but they're like, damn, I need to reset that routine. I need to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
back.
yeah.
I used to, whatever, 2 years ago, now I stop. And that's what I would imagine, like people we consider pious and stuff. Um, you think they're happy with their state? I mean, if they're really pious, they're not happy with their state, right? So,
Yeah, I suppose you're right there. It's easy to
no,
look out.
I don't think there's any end to it, Yanni.
Yeah.
This is what we do
I
in
think
life.
about I think about because we put up a clip the other day about don't judge a book by its cover, where you spoke about certain elders in the masjid, right? Clean shaven, but they're always
Yeah.
there for fashion and stuff. And when I look at those people, I just feel like they don't. I feel like they don't waste much brain space in trying to figure things out because they've kind of like solidified in their routine and like that's me. That's me now.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean,
and
once a routine or an action becomes part of your identity, I mean, that's very hard to stop at that point.
well, that's what I'm
That's
trying
the
to think.
goal.
Like, and I think a lot of this has fascinated me because it's a continuous sort of battle and a continuous sort of thing in my mind. And then I used to think about my dad, and I used to think, oh, he's so solidified in his ways. Like I'd make dua for guidance, but I'd be like it'd be a miracle, it'd be an absolute miracle, right? And then such a life changing event happened that completely transformed him to an unrecognizable at that age of 64. So he died at 66, so he had a good 2 years. So let's just say 64. And I was just like, wow, 64. You know, um, to have such the thing is, bro, it wasn't just prayer. Like it was just even like I remember taking him out to a coffee shop, bro, to have this very deep discussion, like this family matter, right? And I was convinced it was going to go in a particular way. I just prepped myself for it. I was like ready to go down his road, and like we're going to hold hands in this, and I'm going to agree with him and everything because I know exactly where he's going to come from,
Yeah.
etc. And just his first sentence was completely out of left field. I was gobsmacked, and I was just like, what? I was like, do you understand what you're saying? And it was insane. It was an incredible transformation. I didn't recognize the man in front of me. Um, I remember, I remember complaining to my mum. I was like, "Mum, what the hell is happening?" You know. But yeah, so yeah, maybe people do continue to think about those things for their whole lives. And I've just
With
fallen
your
into
dad,
this.
it might have been like he was living a certain way, but his ideals or principles or whatever was just in his head in that time and not maybe in his lifestyle. And when he wanted to change his lifestyle, he knew what exactly to do. Like,
Maybe. I feel like young people try to reinvent themselves. I think they do rapidly when they're
yeah,
very young.
yeah,
But I think because you see people go through phases, you see young people go through
yeah,
different phases
yeah,
very rapidly.
yes,
Especially at school, what they're into, how they dress, how they act, who their
yeah,
friends are. There's that rapid sort of. And then the older I get, I feel like it's slowing down.
yeah,
But that's
definitely.
why I'm. But this is why I'm concerned. I don't know how much longer. Like, what am I going to land on? Like, what is going to be the
I see
next
that. I
40
don't
years of
think
my
like
life?
that. I
You
think,
don't.
inshallah, yani, my thinking is I'm going to be like changing forever.
Do you think? Because that's what I'm scared of. I'm terrified that I'm
That's
not
what I'm
going to.
hoping, and that's what my goal is. And I see people that do that.
Mm,
And I think that, I mean, what they kind of have in common is they're like entrepreneurs, because
mm,
being a business owner or entrepreneur, whatever, it kind of demands that of you. You can't kind of get used to things,
mm.
you know? So because I am like business owner and probably will be inshallah my whole life, like it's going to demand that of me, but
Right.
not, and I'm going to take advantage of that because I don't want to just evolve in my business leadership or whatever sales skills. Like I want to evolve in other areas of life as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you could say the same with scholars, yani people who really take their study of the Sharia very seriously. Think about them like at age 30, they're still considered babies, yani.
I think it depends also on like what your family is like around you, what your setup is, what your responsibilities are. Like sometimes I think like because of that cementation that my dad had, I feel like, oh, I've got kids now and it's getting to that point where they're going to see me in a particular, like I couldn't imagine my dad reinventing himself every few months in front of me growing up. Like my dad was definitively my dad for the whole of my life. And then I think like the other day I was talking to my wife, like, oh, I think I want to start skateboarding. Like that was just something that came up. I started looking at videos, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I didn't buy this. My auntie bought my son a skateboard, but it's big enough for me and it's in my house. And I'm like,
Sick.
but I'm just thinking like, what? That's kind of it doesn't mesh well in my worldview of like
Yeah.
I should know what I do and do what I know now,
Yeah.
and my son should see me as that. And then yesterday I was like looking at tennis. I wanted to basically try and find some sort of exercise that I would enjoy doing. And there's a tennis club behind me, and I was like, I've always liked tennis. Maybe I'll get into tennis again. My
Yeah.
son does tennis at school, so I thought it would be a good bonding thing. But once again, I'm like, I feel like these few years before 30 are like my last chance to try and get in some, transformative kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
future habits before everything is set in stone.
Well, the truth is that, like, that is the truth, I think, normally for 90% of people.
Right.
Wherever they land at 30 or 35 or whatever,
Yeah.
khalas, that's them.
Yeah.
But it's just like some people will aspire to not be like that and to reinvent themselves beyond that. And I just think having the intention to not stay stuck, that alone might be enough to keep going, Yani.
You think so?
I
Maybe.
know I've got a friend who's like 40, but while if you meet him, you'd think he's like 25. Just he's got that youthful energy and.
Right.
And
But then if he's
the
always
thing
had that youthful energy, then it's
well,
part of
obviously he
him.
was young the whole time, so of course he'll have the
Yeah.
youthful energy. But he's got like 4 kids, mashallah. But the thing about him, that's what I'm saying, the pattern is he's lived in wallah maybe 7 different countries. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like been in business. He's had jobs, yani, but he's been in like doing business his own thing for like, I don't know, 5 years, 6, 7, or whatever years. So those are some of the patterns where it's like like somebody who has like standard 9 to 5 job, it probably would be harder to have that mindset of like reinvent and this and that, you know.
I think it's part of probably why people get very comfortable in careers and stuff, and like the
Yeah,
anxiety of having to leave and start
for
something
sure,
completely
for
new,
sure.
because it's a very rigid
Yeah,
structure to
yeah.
to uh,
I
to
mean,
the way
can you
society
imagine, bro?
works.
Like this is a topical subject. Elon Musk buying Twitter.
Right.
Elon Musk is what, like 55 or something. Can you imagine that, bro? Like he's never owned or ran a social media company before. So at 55, he has to kind of
It's 50.
reinvent himself. Of course, he's going to
Yeah.
hire all these smart people or whatever, but he will have to reinvent himself.
but he's also not a like he's got a kid, but he's not. He hasn't got a family.
What's
You
that
know,
got
and
to
I don't
do
know.
with it?
I just feel like that always will keep him in that brain space of completely not irresponsible, but not much to necessarily hold together. Like it doesn't. I just feel like he's on his own, so he can risk it all. You know, if Elon Musk was to lose it all tomorrow,
Risk
then so
what?
be it.
What do you mean?
As in, you become a lot less. You become very risk averse the more you've got to lose in terms of. And I think maybe
So you're
when I
saying
say
when you
lose,
reinvent yourself, it's risky?
oh, absolutely, yeah. I think in a lot of ways, I think
Okay, maybe that's why you're thinking that way.
maybe,
Because
but I think
I only see it as progress.
no. I think reinventing yourself is trying to. I don't know. Embark on new territory, new ground, or whatever. Not
Yeah.
necessarily. It depends what you're trying to. It depends what you're trying to achieve, doesn't it? It depends what
Like
the
just
goal
okay, the
is here.
basic example of let's say you're 35 and you're
Yep.
gonna start skateboarding. Like,
Yeah.
what's the risk there? Like just
Breaking
injury?
yourself, like
Okay.
absolutely breaking,
So
wrecking
what?
yourself.
So what? No, that's not a
um,
big risk. Come on,
oh,
that's not a
bro,
big risk.
bro, break my arm, can't work.
You can't work
That's
for
it.
a few weeks, Annie.
Break my ankle. You know. No, bro. If I literally broke my arms and stuff, not that that's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about that at all. That's not what I'm
Yeah,
worried about. But
yeah.
like, I suppose, bro, my family, who do the shopping? I'm the only one who drives. I'm the only one. Like, who'd help us? Like, I rely the family
Bro,
rely
if
solely
that's
on me.
actually how you think, then you're
I'm
already
not.
like
But now that you
you're
thought that,
50 in your head already, bro.
but now that you think, now you say that, that's what I'm thinking about. But when he's sort of speaking about Elon Musk and stuff, like I'm saying, like business decisions or whatever, or like, oh, I'm going to randomly buy Twitter. Right? Oh, well, I've just lost 400. Like he put loads of his Tesla shares as collateral. So if he was to lose all of that and lose all of this, suddenly it's just a downward
Yeah.
spiral. Well, it's all on him. You know, he hasn't necessarily got people that he has to put on food on the table for in that way. Yes, he's got a son, but
That's
I'm
not
assuming
true
this.
at all, bro. He's
That's the way I'm
got
thinking
way
about
more
it.
responsibility than you and I. He
No, not deep though. Not deep on a deep level.
well, I don't
All
know. It
those people.
depends on your opinion of him and
Are you
how he
talking about
thinks.
employees and stuff?
Well, that's one level, yeah. He's got
Oh,
many kids, though. By the way, he's got
oh,
like
right,
8
really?
kids.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
he probably pays like gives money to because he's divorced from like 3 women. He's probably paying for all those kids, right?
I
He's
don't
probably
know.
got crazy like loans and money he owes, and he's got I don't know 100,000 employees, 50,000 employees,
Yeah,
whatever
but
it is.
they're all adults. They can go get another job.
No,
Like,
no, no.
yeah.
But if you were him, you wouldn't think like that.
Well, maybe.
Bro, can you
I don't
imagine
know.
firing like 300 people at once? Telling them, "Khalas, go find your rizq somewhere else." Yani, he's got way more to lose than you and I, and he's spending 8 billion of his dollars on Twitter.
I, yeah, but I don't know. I disagree. I honestly disagree.
With what
I
exactly?
honestly feel like he has got nothing to lose compared to you and I. I feel
No,
like the
so,
family unit is way more valuable
oh.
than anything that Elon Musk would ever have.
But that's because you value that a lot.
Maybe, yeah.
But maybe he doesn't. So he might be like the worst case scenario for him is firing someone or his baby, like SpaceX, whatever, not achieving its mission of going to. Maybe that's his like worst case scenario.
Yeah,
So I
possibly.
agree that there's only so far he can fall, right?
But
Like there won't be a day where he's not like a multimillionaire. That
I think
probably won't happen. So he's got less to lose than us. He's got.
so. I see him. I see him as very impulsive, and I see that impulsivity
Yeah.
all the time in people that are young and have nothing to lose, and they annoy me. They annoy me because they make stupid decisions and don't think about anyone but themselves, and it damages everyone
I
because
think
of
that's
that.
your
Damages everyone
paradigm.
around me, and I think that's why I'm like I maybe box myself into this sensible corner
Yeah.
because uh, I don't know. It's like I was drilled into me from my dad. Don't stick your head out too much.
Yeah.
You know, don't do this, don't do that. They'll come after you. They'll do this, they'll do that. Whatever it is, it was very much drilled into me.
Well, there you
And
go.
then
Well, now you
yeah,
know where it's coming from.
yeah,
But
but
now
I
you
don't.
have the choice whether you want to continue with that way of seeing it or not.
I think I have no choice to because I see some horrendous things online, horrendous news stories, horrendous all sorts.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to make this hard right turn into a very dark topic, but I don't know if you saw articles and reporting on the massacre that happened in 2013 in Syria.
Yeah, someone
There's a
told me
video.
about it, but I didn't
Okay,
see. Yeah.
so and I don't want to make this like just completely out of left field, but I'll
Okay.
tell you why I thought about it. So there was a report going around that this video had surfaced of a massacre that happened in Syria. I think it was in 2013, where 300 people died, 300 people were murdered, should I say, um, by regime forces in Syria. So Assad's militia, whatever, um, and very, very gruesomely, mercilessly, blindfolded, hands behind their back, walked to a pit, pushed into the pit and shot dead, or shot first and pushed into the pit. And I read it first. I remember reading it, bro, um, reading the article, and I was just like, it completely obliterated me. And then I was just scrolling through Twitter, and there was the video. It was just someone had shared it, or it was being posted, or whatever, and it was horrendous. It was absolutely horrific. And then what I started identifying with wasn't the young people, it wasn't the teenagers, it wasn't the kids that were being killed that were there in the video. It was the men. It was the men that were dressed the way I am, that had the same responsibilities I had a family the same way I had. And I'm not saying, absolutely in no way, shape, or form, saying that they put themselves in that position. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, imagine that you got yourself in hot water as a man that's responsible for a family, and because you couldn't weigh up the consequences and you didn't consider what you had to lose, you put yourself in a position where your family can't rely on you anymore. And I think that's my concern. My concern is doing something stupid, putting myself in a stupid situation that I've then lost it all. The reason I'm talking about that massacre is because they were in the most helpless position they ever could be. Their hands were tied behind their backs, they were blindfolded, and their family was being killed all around them. And I'm not saying that, Allah knows best, but I'm not saying that it's likely that I get myself in that sort of situation. That's not. But what I'm saying is that gave me that gave me the example of complete helplessness. And I said, I never want to be in a position where through my own actions, I've just become helpless for my family, and they're all suffering.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of those incidents are completely out of the person's hands. Something can happen, a war can start, whatever it is, and it's just not your fault. But I consider myself so deeply responsible for my family's well-being that I can't justify risk taking on that level, on any level, like on an
Well,
Elon
yeah, it
Musk
depends
level.
what level we're talking about, because we started out talking about skateboarding.
Yeah, I know. True. Skateboard is not the thing. Skateboard is not the thing. Skateboard is just one of the things. Like, how far will you go to keep trying the new things?
But you
Right?
were saying, I think seriously, that skateboarding is risky enough. Like, you might consider that um, kind of threatening the stability or your ability to look after your family, right?
I only, you know what? I only thought of that as you mentioned what are the risks, and then I just started fishing for risks. I'd never actually thought about it,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
there wasn't anything that stopped me
Yeah.
from doing the skateboarding
Yeah.
thing.
I mean,
You know,
there's a term for what you just did, right? I don't remember the term. It's basically when you don't want to do something,
yeah,
you find the worst example of it and you
yeah,
say,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
why I'm not going to do it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So, to be fair about the thing we're talking about, we have to think of what's a realistic middle ground thing, that a risk you might take, and then what would the worst case scenario
Yeah.
be
I
for
don't
that
consider
thing?
it a risk. I don't consider that a risk. I think my thought process was more of um, like I said, I associate impulsivity with immaturity, and I'm wondering
Yeah,
for how much longer will I have impulsive thoughts, because I already know that they're far less than they were when I was a teenager. Do you understand? So
yeah,
I'm saying when I was younger, I was very clearly and uh, I very clearly remember how impulsive I was, how I would make quick decisions, be into things very briefly, very quickly,
yeah,
start something, drop something all the time.
yes,
As I got older, that started happening less and less and less. Now, this skateboarding thing, I can't remember the last time I had some sort of thing like that. Where
yeah,
I'd watching something for so long.
yeah,
You know, and then that's what made me think, like, what is it that I'm going to land on? Who is the Mohamed Rezgi that's going to be here from now until I die? Like, who is that person? Because that is the person that my kids are going to see. That
yeah,
is going to be the definitive dad that they know.
yeah,
Do you understand?
yeah,
That is basically it in a nutshell. Because the same way that I just thought, I felt like I knew my dad. for all my life, my dad was just like a book. I knew exactly what the book was up until he got diagnosed with cancer, and he was suddenly this new person for the
Yeah,
last 2
yeah.
years. Not that,
So you're
I
saying
felt
you never saw him as changing much over those years,
absolute, bro. I
but he
could
might
read
have,
him.
right?
He may have, and maybe to my mum, who knew him more than
Yeah,
me, and
exactly.
on
Yeah,
an intimate level,
yeah.
she felt like she knew him. But there was never a time, bro, where I said to my mum, "This is what Dad's going to say to this," and she disagreed with me. Up until those last
Yeah.
2 years, where I just couldn't read him, I didn't
He was a man
understand.
of principles, bro.
Well, that's it. But that made me think that for a particular time in his life, he got cemented. And my mum says that it's when he had us and he
Yeah,
had things to
yeah,
lose, right? That's when he cemented himself.
yeah,
I've already had my kids. I'm still having those impulsive thoughts here and there, not
yeah.
necessarily always acting on them.
But let me tell you something, bro. Like that, what you just said, yeah. You associate impulsivity with youth or whatever, immaturity.
Yep.
I would agree, but I wouldn't see that as 100% a negative thing. Like, I think impulsivity has its place, and there's a reason that, like, everyone has their place. Yeah, and we need some people like that who will do impulsive things, and it will have good outcomes. And the older people wouldn't have done it, right? And we shouldn't hope to lose that fully, yani, because part of it's interesting. I'll tell you something. I was listening to an interview that Mohamed Hijab did with Islam 21C. They just put it out yesterday or something. And it was a good conversation they were having about this concept of being very deliberate and thoughtful about what you say in your dawah and being impulsive. And Mohamed Hijab said, of course, yani, you shouldn't be extreme, but he said you should always lean to being impulsive. Yeah,
Right.
I thought that's interesting that he said that. And he said that's because the Prophet ﷺ said two things, the worst things that can come together in a man is cowardice and stinginess. And he said impulsivity gets you out of the cowardice thing because you're more of a doer without, he said the more you deliberate and think too much over things, that's where cowardice can set in.
Right.
Yeah, that was his understanding of it and explanation for why he leans that way. The point is, like, we see Mohamed Hijab and the type of things he does and some of the wacky things and some of the really good things he's done. And it's a full package. Part of his package is the impulsivity. And I don't want an ummah where we don't have anyone like that's impulsive kind of thing. And I especially don't like even like we shouldn't see impulsivity or doing something that's slightly reckless or slightly like just risk taking. That shouldn't be the domain of like just the fusaq or the kind of ignorant, uneducated young people. It should be that we have mature scholars who have that twist about them. That's what I believe. We need that, and this thinking in duality too much, it's not right. You don't just have to be mature and deliberate about everything. You can be mature and be a risk taker and be impulsive sometimes at the right time. We don't have to divide ourselves in this way, like, and set this identity where I'm this way always, So for example, like with yourself, you're thinking about risk taking and how you are and this and that. Like, we were talking about this on a few episodes about like whether you're going to Tunisia and going to Tunisia would require like a career change or whatever it is, Yani. These are things that are associated with the risk, and this is change, and this is, and this has a risk for your family. But it's something that you're thinking about deliberately, and then you make the change, right?
But the horse in front of that cart isn't necessarily my own desires and ambition and impulsivity.
Why are you linking the two?
Well, this is it. I can't help it.
No,
because if somebody said,
if I'm impulsive, it might be for a good reason. I might be jumping at something for a good reason.
Possibly.
Not just for my own thing, Yani.
I think it's a personality trait that somehow I picked up along the way, where I find comfort in rules and comfort in
and I would say I'm on the similar lines to you, but I just aspire to not be so extreme in that way, because I feel I'm quite extreme in that sense.
I think that's what I don't know if it's a byproduct of, like, I do wonder sometimes if a impulsive individual can really, and when I say impulsive, like that's what they're known for, so very
Oh, okay.
easily sort of, are they, how how do they practice their Islam? Because all the impulsive people I know don't necessarily practice, because they're very in and out,
They go
very in
face
and
to
out very
face, yeah.
quickly.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
very
that's
in
why
and out.
I agree with you 100%. Impulsivity shouldn't be a defining feature of your character,
Right.
probably. Yeah. And that's where the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ comes in, that haste is from shaitan,
Well, yeah, I was
you
thinking
know.
of that
And
whilst you were talking. But
yeah.
it's true because, like, when I was younger, yeah, like you'd always consider, like, you'd always maybe. I mean, I knew somewhere inside me that, oh, I should start practicing Islam when I'm older. I don't know where that came from, but definitely it was there. I remember even thinking about it when I was in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
You know. But there was all that impulsivity going around, which is what it is. It's like, oh, desires, follow this, follow that, be this, be that, who's that? And then, like, when you start questioning the world around you, it's very comforting to suddenly pick up the Quran or pick up a book, a manual, an instruction manual for life, and then it gives you all the answers. I just need to follow this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so easy. Oh, just okay, that's it. All my questions are answered.
Mhm.
Anytime I've got a decision to make, what does Islam say about this? Easy. Like that, I think it brought my life so much ease, and it closed so many chapters of self-discovery and trying to figure things out. Which people spend. People have existential crises about these. I remember going to uni, and they were talking about people, like all these scholars, whatever you want to call them, professors, commit suicide because they just couldn't make sense of what they should do or what life was about or this purpose, because purpose was so defined. And it was so easy to go to somewhere for the answers. Like, anytime I'm stuck on something, bro, even if it's not immediately in front of me in the Quran or Sunnah, you just go to some sheikh and ask him. Go to Islam Q&A, and at least that way there's some backing to that kind of answer, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just like everything's made out. That it made me forget what life was like before. I cannot remember, bro, what life was like before I was practicing. Like, I don't remember how I used to think. I don't know how I could think before. I don't know where my thoughts would go. Who were my role models? Where did I go for inspiration? And the only thing I can vaguely think about was like movies and cinema, which is why I was I recall being so, what's the word? Influenced by movies and cinema after I'd come out of a movie. Like, I just wanted to be, bro. I remember,
Goodfellas.
I remember, bro. I remember going to see, what was it? Like Pitch Black, which is like a Vin Diesel film, some sort of sci-fi film where he's, bro, I remember Oxford Billah, and I had this thought yesterday, and I'll share it because it's embarrassing. But I remember, bro, I was fascinated by how deep his voice was, and I was like, yo, I need to find out how to speak that deeply.
Yeah.
I remember I googled it and all this stuff, and it was like, oh, you just basically have to speak with a deep voice for a long time until it becomes normal. So like for like a week, bro, I had this like super deep voice anytime I speak. Do you know what I mean? And then it just made me think, like, look how impressionable I was. Like, anything that I thought was the right way to go, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And you see that in this day and age with like maybe Red Pill movement, all these YouTube self-help stuff, all of this
Bro,
stuff.
you
People
see
are trying to reinvent
35, 40-year-olds like that still.
But I think that's not because of the age as an arbitrary thing.
Yeah,
I don't believe
know.
age.
It's because
I
of
think
the
it's because
immaturity or the lack of
immaturity, the lack of
purpose or whatever. Yeah.
lack of purpose, whatever.
Yeah.
I
mean, you've got
but
like
yeah.
you're like 40-year-olds going to do the whole ayahuasca thing and trying to discover themselves.
All sorts of stuff.
You know,
yeah,
at a
all
late
these
age,
all
Annie.
these getaway. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is the blessing of Islam, Yani. Yeah.
But that's it. Like, I think I don't know if I'm. I don't know that if my complete comfort in. It's a weird way of phrasing it. Maybe it's just, Islam is such a guide to me, that in some way, shape, or form, I've developed an aversion to impulsivity. And I question, like, am I holding myself back by not trying out new things or trying to explore new things or challenge myself? As long as my fundamentals are there, my Islamic obligations are covered, and I'm not talking about trying like new good deeds or extra forms of worship or whatever. That's different to me. For example, let's say I made it my mission to pray tahajjud 3 times a week. Okay, I wouldn't consider that as impulsivity. I don't necessarily have that framework when it comes to trying to improve things in Deen. But when it comes to things outside of Deen, if there is such a thing, but these like extra hobbies or extra things or extra external things or whatever interests they are, then it's like, oh, cannot. It's a weird space there. Let me get back to what's comfortable. And I think there is a weird psychology behind that.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean,
Makes sense.
I think a lot of this comes down to how you want to think about it,
Yeah.
or how you self-identify. It's like if I see myself as someone, there are certain people like my business partner Faisal. He really identifies fully as a lifelong learner. Yeah.
Right.
So to tell that guy like, why do you need to learn, or why do you need to keep learning? Like, khalas, yani, you've read 1,000 books. He just would go nuts about that, right?
Yeah.
Because his thing is like, no, like, of course I am going to learn till I die, right? So what about if your belief was like, I'm choosing to keep doing new things or reinventing myself or being that kind of flexible person with, always having that level of youthful energy. It's just a decision, I think. But you wouldn't make that decision if you see risk in it, of course.
It's interesting. You've made me think of one example, maybe, where I did start trying to challenge my own status quo. Very light. But when I got married, I realized there was a lot of things, obviously, that were different to me and my wife, the way we approach things.
Yeah.
For example, it sounds pathetic, but like asking for a particular customization on a menu, right? Or complaining about some sort of service that you received, or taking up a complaint with the manager or the waiter or whatever,
Yeah.
or asking someone for directions, stuff like that. Absolutely no go. Feel ridiculously awkward. I would never do that in a million years. I would rather suffer in silence and keep it moving than ever address those kind of things.
Okay.
And I remember one time me and my wife had a bit of an argument because she wanted a slushie with 2 different flavors in it, even though on the menu,
but
there
the
was only
menu
red and
didn't
blue.
allow that.
The menu didn't have that, and I was just like, "Hey, we're not. Why would I ask for something that's not in the menu?
We gotta follow the rules."
Exactly. That was
Yeah.
such a thing to me, and for
Yeah.
her, she's like, "What is your problem?" Right? And I remember that was such a big thing at the
Yes.
time. That, like, not a big argument, but like it was a big realization how rigid I was with certain things, and how she didn't have that in her upbringing. Certainly
Yes.
didn't have that with her dad. And then when I would see how her dad was very much, flexible, and whatever he kind of wanted, he would try and achieve, whilst I would only pick what was there for me in all situations. I would never try and develop this new thing or go for a new way or whatever. I was very comfortable in those rules and those set boundaries.
Yeah.
Um,
This is it's a personality trait, definitely.
Possibly,
it's definitely a
but
thing.
I don't know what it was, but when I went to Tunisia, I felt this. I think it's because it was maybe such a major life event that I was suddenly not just forced to do new things, but empowered to do new things. That I kind of went into all of my other things as well. And I remember specifically coming back from Tunisia, and certain situations would pop up. My wife would be like, "Whoa, that's not like you. Why did you do that?" That's and she was impressed.
You mean recently, or?
Yeah, recently, like since I came back from and I can't think for the life of me of some definitive examples, but there was like things I would suddenly start challenging. I would get up and go complain about something, or I'd go and things I would never necessarily do before.
Yeah.
And then I felt kind of felt good about it. I felt good that I challenged my status quo. I felt good that I did something that the older me would have never done. Even on a small scale. So yeah, I suppose there is a feel good nature about stepping out of your comfort zone and that feeling of achievement that you've actually grown.
Exactly.
I think maybe the anxiety is like, at what point do people stop growing? Like, is there actually a stop growing
It's up to
thing?
you, I think.
Maybe that's
this is like the famous growth mindset versus static mindset or whatever.
Yeah.
The growth mindset is like, that you are able to grow. Some people are deterministic. They think this is how I am and that's it. I can't actually change. But the truth is you can always change. You can always change. The truth, there's so many, the proof, I mean, is there's loads of examples, whether from the Sahaba that changed or whether just anyone really. You always heard of people that change at age 20, 50, 70. We always hear that. So it's up to you. And sometimes changing is scary though, isn't it? Especially if you're comfortable with certain rules. But
I think is ultimately, like you said, I think a lot of us will have if at the ages that we're at now, it may be easy to kind of slip quite comfortably into that routine for the rest of your life, because that is what you've known everyone at 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 doing. You
Yeah.
know, the impulsivity, the new ideas, the reinvention of the self seems to happen a lot at school age, university, when people are still finding themselves. And I think, ultimately there's that decision that has to be made. Are you going to continue trying to, like, is there a you? Is there a real you? Is there an objective you that you're reaching? Or does you change every single few months or every single week or every single, like, that's the kind of thing, right?
We've fully got into philosophy at this point.
It's we are the ship of Theseus, bro. If I keep changing myself,
Yeah, there you go.
am I still the same? You know, it's true. It's true though. Like, it'd be interesting, to go back to like old Mind Heist episodes and just think, because I still haven't done it, and I don't even know if I ever will. But to go and listen to like a whole episode and feel like, do I still agree with that person there? Because Mind Heist arguably started for me, after I got married. So things started very clearly cementing from there,
Yeah.
and the loop, there are going to be loops of like, I've started this thing, or I've stopped, or I've started this thing, especially with diet and exercise and stuff. But that itself, I feel like, is the perpetuity of my personality, not necessarily something so, like, if I said to you now, bro, oh, dude, I've started skateboarding, and like in a year's time, I'm still skateboarding. The old episode 1 of Mind Heist version of me would be like, what?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? How did you do that? Like, it's impossible, because by then we'd already cemented what our hobbies and our interests were. But for you, like you, for example, now, I mean, for you to start a very outlandish sort of hobby or exercise or whatever, completely like out of there, such as skateboarding, rollerblading, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Is that feasible? Like, I tweeted Tony Hawk, bro. He never replied to me. I said to him, "Am I too old to skate?" He never replied, but I know he probably would have. He probably would have said, "No, never," because I see him with his helmet on and his shoulder pads and stuff, his elbow and knee pads, and I'm like,
How
he's
old's
got
he?
it.
Like 50 or something?
I don't know, man. He looks old, for disrespect. See, Tony Hawk, 53, 53, and he's doing flips and dips and all sorts of tricks,
Bro, it's very feasible for me.
Yeah.
Very
What was the
feasible.
last? Okay, let's put it to you, Amin Omar. What was the last thing that was like new, like a new kind of endeavor, apart from writing a book, I suppose? But I feel like you've always been working towards that. It's not necessarily a new sort of path.
No, the
you're
new
trying
thing that I did was like a month ago. I don't know if this counts what you're talking about, but I went shooting for the first time. And I went shooting, the shooting range. I was kind of considering it, taking it up as a hobby kind of thing.
Right.
So I did that for the first time.
Okay, that's interesting. I think it's got to be something a bit more long term though. Like, this is now part of me.
Well, let's see. I mean, there are a few things I'm thinking of, right? So there's shooting, there's horse riding, and there's like taking on language learning like more seriously. These things. I want to do like two out of those three, like long term or medium long term. So
I think for me, the last thing was probably, it's hard actually, isn't it? Because I do feel like things like Pure XI, things like the graphic design I'm doing, they've been long enough for me to consider them part of me, part of what I do. Definitely the graphic design stuff. I feel like, because although one would argue that maybe that's something I've always had, because I remember doing weird stuff on Photoshop when I was 13, bro. It's just like it's just regurgitating the old skills and the old stuff. It's hard because, like I said, bro, I remember teenage years, man, always trying to figure out who you were, always starting new things, trying new things. I'll pick this up, put this down, pick this up, put this down.
what about your friends, bro? Like, what are they like? Are they more like, which side are they more like doing new things and youthful energy, or like conservative and keeping the routine?
So that's part of why where the discussion came from. Like, a lot of them are more prone to like bending rules and breaking them than me. Like, and I've spoke about this on the podcast before about like disputes about parking, for example. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have to park in the right place,
Uh-huh.
you know. But they wouldn't mind parking in a double yellow or parking quickly in some,
Yeah.
whatever. And it just grinds my gears. I can't. It doesn't fit in my head,
Yeah.
unless it was an absolute emergency. I just can't,
Yeah.
because then I'd only be myself to blame if I got a ticket. But then I
But
might
what
have the.
about these life projects or pursuits or
It's
hobbies?
hard. I don't think I know anyone on that deep of a level.
Really?
To no, I don't think I do. Not anymore.
Because I was
I feel like
thinking like someone I've talked about quite a bit is Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss, I don't even listen to his podcast that much, but you know what? I always listen to his episodes where it's just him and his friend chatting,
yeah,
like
yeah,
Mind
yeah,
High style, yeah?
yeah.
And whenever I listen to those, I'll find out he's like 42 or something. I'll find out he just started some new thing, right?
Yeah.
So he's not my friend, but yani, I have that connection to him in terms of the input, taking the input from him. And then yani, looking at friends and this and that. I feel like my world being full of those kind of examples makes me feel more like, yeah, I can do this. I could do a new thing. I can, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the people that I probably socialize with now, I've only really known them for 3 years or so, 3.5 years. I don't think it's long enough. I think the people, I've never necessarily known anyone for, I've got one friend actually that I've known him since I've started practicing, very close with him and stuff. But I would argue he's mostly the same as he always has been, and I think that's what it is. Like, I think the norm is to be the same as you always have been,
definitely.
And I think that's what my concern ultimately is. It's like, okay, from this point onwards, how do your kids see you? How are you definitively going to be seen for the future? Because in
Can
my
you
head,
imagine, bro, being like 40, right? Your kids are like, let's say 12 or whatever, and you start being a vlogger.
whoa,
Can you
bro,
imagine?
maybe I'm having a midlife crisis. Maybe that's what it is. That's what they talk about, isn't it? You get these 40-year-olds that suddenly go out and impulsively buy like a convertible.
But you're not doing that, are you? You don't want to do that.
No, but then it's like, maybe that's what the midlife crisis is that they get to that age and they're like, oh my God, I'm not impulsive anymore. I used to do crazy stuff when I was younger.
Yeah, it's
I start
possible.
doing crazy things again.
It's possible.
And that's where the midlife crisis comes from. Wow, I just spent like an hour and a half talking about something that is quite clearly defined in pop culture. It's got a name, it's got everything. So there's all sorts of books about it, and we've been trying to articulate it for ages. That's it. Next book incoming.
Yeah, bro. Challenge yourself, man. But I'll say that for sure. Being like in business, it forces you to change. Unless you got one of these like old school businesses, like a cab firm or whatever. Yeah, okay, you're gonna be in the same office as the same thing all until Uber comes and smashes you. Yeah. But yeah, many businesses at least, they'll keep you fresh, man. They'll keep you moving.
Well, yeah, new age tech business based on tech would always do that.
Yeah, definitely. And especially if you're aiming for like high growth and stuff. And then, doing stuff like moving to a new country, again, that's going to force you this whole new thing. And yeah, bro, when I think about, because when I said language learning, I'm not sure if I'm going to do Arabic or Turkish or both, or I don't think I should do it same time. But if I got like sick level of Arabic, that might take me a year, let's say. Like that would change my whole life. I would be reinvented. Like we were talking about reinvent. I would be reinvented because the types of friendships I could make would be completely different. Because I'd be able to get closer to Arabic speakers, right? On top of that, I'd be able to engage with, Islamic texts in a deeper level. And I feel like it would completely change my life. And that's
you'd have access to a completely separate world.
Yeah, like I already kind of have access to that, but I think I shy away from it because of my lack of proficiency, Like yesterday, I think I was in a cafe with all Arabic speakers. I was speaking Arabic, but there's a level of engagement I can't reach with my current level. So I think it would make a huge difference. And that's just like learning a language from your home. And it's not a big deal. It's not risky, is it? You can't say that's risky. But that would reinvent me perhaps,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Um,
Especially Turkish. Like if you learn Turkish, you'd have access
yeah, that
to a
would
whole different
open
world
a
in
lot of
Turkey.
things. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
open a lot of things.
Mm.
Um, another one thing I'm doing new kind of is like I put out a few YouTube videos recently, which I haven't done for like a couple years, and I was just doing like mind heist, but now inshallah I'm like I'm trying to invest a lot into that side of things, so that's like a new thing.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't see risks in these things per se, and also I see it that you can always stop something. Just because you start something doesn't mean you can't stop it, kind of
Mm.
thing.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. It's been an interesting discussion. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
it'd be interesting to get into the minds of our children and see how they see us. I don't know if you could ever have that conversation, but
That would
I
be
suppose,
awkward, but I aspire to have that relationship with my
yeah.
kids.
But it would be because, like, there will be a day, well, Allah knows best, where you have an argument with your child and they will describe you to a T in a way that you might have not necessarily seen yourself, you know. And you might have like that with your wife as well. Like your wife might be able to describe you in a way that you never necessarily succinctly put yourself into that description, but actually you realize you can't argue with the way they've just described you,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
And I think that this started coming up when I got married, like I said to you earlier, about those kind of little
Yeah.
examples of like very clearly following those rigid set out rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you don't see yourself until somebody who knows you deeply describes your actions and your behavior and your personality. Because you've applied for jobs before, bro. Let's say describe yourself, write yourself a CV, and it's just it all sounds the same. You know, I'm this and I'm that and I'm this. But I always try and get someone else to write it for me because then they're going to describe me a lot better. You know,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting that way. It's interesting. Anyway, bro,
Let's wrap it up, man. Good one.
let's wrap it up.
Do we have anything to say at the end?
Join our Telegram.
Yeah, that's good.
I like our Telegram.
Yeah.
How many people we got on there?
Like
It's
55.
cool. We got some real good people in there, and 50 something. It's quite. Oh no, more people are joining, bro. It's like 50 yesterday, now it's 57.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, it's a good little community, and I like to ask questions about Mind Heist, what we want to do. You likewise. Sometimes we post some thoughts in there. We have some discussions in there.
Behind
some
the
people
scenes.
behind the scenes and stuff. I want to start using it more. I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more, I guess, engagement we get, then the more we'll invest in it, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, if you want to support the dawah, then go to.
Well, I need dawah, bro. Support me getting dawah. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got mindheadspodcast.com. I don't know if it'll be working when we put this out, but we've got that for, different links to different places. We've got the audio version, the video version, just so you know there are those two versions of this. And yeah, see you next episode, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Shadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Oh.